You are being hunted, not by a predator with claws and teeth, but by a predator with a smile and a compliment. We spend our lives fearing the wrong things. We lock our doors against strangers. We avoid dark alleys. We build walls around our homes. But the real danger doesn't climb through windows. It walks through the front door. It sits at your dinner table. It sleeps beside you in bed. The most sophisticated violence isn't physical, it's psychological. It leaves no bruises that a doctor can photograph. It breaks no bones that an X-ray can reveal. Instead, it fractures something far more fundamental: your perception of reality itself. It dismantles the architecture of your mind, brick by brick, until you're standing in ruins, wondering how the building collapsed. This is the realm of what psychologists call dark psychology, the study of predatory human behavior patterns. And make no mistake, manipulators are everywhere. They're in boardrooms, wearing expensive suits and discussing quarterly earnings. They're in bedrooms, whispering words of love while calculating their next move. They're in family homes, playing the role of the concerned parent or devoted sibling. They don't want to destroy you. That would be wasteful. They want to use you. To them, you are not a human being with dreams, fears, and inherent worth. You are an appliance, a resource to be mined for attention, money, intimacy, or status. Most people never realize they've been manipulated until years have passed. They wake up one morning, drained, depressed, and hollow, staring at a stranger in the mirror, asking themselves, "What happened to me? When did I become this person?" The Stoic Ronin does not permit this. To walk the path of the Ronin is to be sovereign over your own consciousness. And you cannot be sovereign if someone else holds the remote control to your emotions, your decisions, your very sense of self. In this video, we're going to dissect the playbook. I will reveal the 7 primary signs of covert manipulation, the tactics employed by narcissists, sociopaths, and what psychologists call dark triad personalities to control you. We'll analyze lovebombing, gaslighting, guilt-tripping, moving goalposts, isolation, triangulation, and the devastatingly effective intermittent reinforcement. This isn't merely information. This is an antidote. Once you perceive the strings, the puppet master's power evaporates. Watch closely. Your freedom depends on it. Sign 1. Lovebombing, the neurochemical hijacking. The first sign is the most intoxicating. It feels like destiny manifesting before your eyes. But it's actually a calculated strategy. It's called lovebombing. Picture this. You meet someone, a potential romantic partner, a new colleague, perhaps even a charismatic friend. Within days, not weeks or months, but days, they're telling you that you're the most extraordinary person they've ever encountered. They text you constantly. They shower you with gifts, attention, future plans. They say things like, "I've never felt this kind of connection before," or, "It's like we've known each other for lifetimes," or, "You're exactly what I've been searching for." Your brain responds predictably. It floods your system with dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward and pleasure, and oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. You feel seen in a way you've perhaps never experienced. You feel validated. You feel euphoric. This neurochemical state is not love. It's grooming. The neuroscience of addiction. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. Dr. Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist at Rutgers University, conducted fMRI studies on people who reported being madly in love. The brain scans revealed activity patterns remarkably similar to cocaine addiction. The ventral tegmental area and the caudate nucleus, both part of the brain's reward system, lit up like a Christmas tree. When someone love bombs you, they're essentially dosing you with your own neurochemicals. The manipulator understands, whether consciously or instinctively, that to control you, they must first disarm your natural defenses. Excessive flattery is the anesthesia administered before the surgery begins. They create an idealized image of themselves, carefully constructed to match your deepest desires. This is called mirroring. If you mention you value intellectual conversation, suddenly they're reading Dostoevsky. If you say loyalty is your highest virtue, they transform into the most devoted person on earth. If you dream of traveling to Japan, coincidentally, they've always wanted to visit Kyoto. This isn't serendipity, it's strategy. The Stoic analysis, Marcus Aurelius and the test of time. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." The emphasis here is on being, not appearing. Character reveals itself through consistent action over time, not through performative gestures compressed into a brief window. Real connection is cultivated, not instant. Trust is earned through repeated evidence of integrity, not granted because someone says the right words. When someone offers you immediate intimacy, what psychologists call accelerated bonding, you should ask yourself a crucial question. Why the rush? The answer is simple. They're rushing because they cannot maintain the facade indefinitely. The mask requires tremendous energy to hold in place. They need you psychologically addicted to their validation before cracks begin appearing in the performance. It's a race against time, and they know it. Historical parallel, the Trojan horse. The ancient Greeks understood this principle. The Trojan horse wasn't presented as a weapon. It was offered as a gift, something beautiful and desirable. The Trojans, flattered by what appeared to be an offering of peace, brought it inside their walls. We know how that story ended. Love bombing operates on the same principle. The gift is beautiful. The attention feels wonderful. But inside, there's an army waiting to breach your defenses. The Ronin defense, boundaries as strength. When you receive overwhelming praise from someone you barely know, practice this discipline. Observe it rather than absorb it. Create distance between the compliment and your ego. Ask yourself, do they actually know me well enough to make these claims? Or are they projecting a fantasy onto me? Then, slow everything down deliberately. Set boundaries. A manipulator despises boundaries because boundaries interfere with their timeline. Try this experiment. Tell them, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I prefer to let things develop naturally. Watch their reaction carefully. If they become defensive, if they accuse you of being cold or afraid of happiness, if they intensify their pursuit rather than respect your pace, you've just exposed them. A person with genuine interest will respect your boundaries. A manipulator will view them as obstacles to overcome. Sign 2. Gaslighting, the systematic destruction of reality. Once you're neurochemically bonded, the second phase initiates. This is perhaps the most insidious weapon in the manipulator's arsenal. Gaslighting. The term originates from Patrick Hamilton's 1938 play Gaslight, later adapted into a film. In it, a husband systematically dims the gas-powered lights in their home, then insists to his wife that the lights haven't changed, that she's imagining things. Slowly, methodically, he drives her to question her own sanity. In contemporary life, gaslighting manifests through phrases like these. I never said that. You're remembering it wrong. You're being too sensitive. You always overreact. It was just a joke. Why can't you ever take a joke? That never happened. You're creating drama. You're being paranoid. I'm worried about you. The mechanism, cognitive dissonance and self-doubt. The objective of gaslighting is to make you doubt your own memory, perception, and ultimately, your sanity. When you confront them about harmful behavior, they don't apologize or acknowledge wrongdoing. Instead, they question your mental stability. They rewrite history. They present an alternative narrative with such confidence that eventually you begin thinking, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I did misunderstand. Maybe there's something wrong with me. This creates what psychologist Leon Festinger called cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort experienced when holding two contradictory beliefs simultaneously. Your memory tells you one thing. Your eyes saw what they saw. But this person you've been conditioned to trust through love bombing is telling you something entirely different. To resolve this psychological tension, your brain makes a devastating choice. It decides to trust them and distrust yourself. You become dependent on them as your arbiter of reality. You stop trusting your instincts. You become, in essence, a hollow vessel filled with their version of events. The neuroscience, how gaslighting rewires the brain. Dr. Robin Stern, author of The Gaslight Effect, explains that prolonged gaslighting can actually alter brain structure. The constant state of anxiety and confusion keeps the amygdala, your brain's threat detection system, in a state of hyperactivation. Meanwhile, the hippocampus, responsible for memory formation, begins to atrophy under chronic stress. This isn't metaphorical damage. This is measurable, physical change to your neural architecture. You're not going crazy. You're experiencing the neurological consequences of psychological warfare. Philosophical context: Descartes and the foundation of knowledge. René Descartes famously began his philosophical inquiry by doubting everything, even his own senses and memories. He arrived at cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. This was his foundational certainty, the one thing he couldn't doubt. The gaslighter attempts to destroy even this foundation. They want you to doubt not just your memories or perceptions, but your capacity to think clearly at all. When successful, they've eliminated the very bedrock of your psychological autonomy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." But the Stoic understanding is that while we should question our interpretations, we should trust our direct experiences. The gaslighter perverts this wisdom, trying to replace your perspective entirely with theirs. Literary parallel: 1984 and the Ministry of Truth. George Orwell understood gaslighting at a societal scale. In 1984, the protagonist Winston Smith works at the Ministry of Truth, where historical records are continuously altered to match the party's current narrative. The party's ultimate power isn't its surveillance or violence, it's its ability to control reality itself. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command. The personal gaslighter operates as your individual Ministry of Truth, constantly revising history to maintain control. The Ronin defense: documentation as armor. The most effective defense against gaslighting is embarrassingly simple. Write things down. Keep a journal. Screenshot text messages. Record dates, times, and exact words when possible. Facts become your shield. When they say, "That conversation never happened," you don't argue. You don't try to convince them. You cannot convince a liar of the truth they already know. Instead, you simply state, "I have a different recollection, and I trust my memory." Then you disengage. This is crucial. Disengage. Don't try to make them see reason. Don't defend yourself. Don't enter their reality distortion field. The moment you start arguing about what really happened, you've already lost. You've accepted the premise that your memory is up for debate. A Ronin trusts his senses. When someone consistently tells you that your direct experiences didn't happen, you don't need to prove they're lying. You simply need to stop accepting them as a reliable narrator of reality. Sign 3. Guilt tripping. Weaponized compassion. The third sign exploits your greatest strength, your empathy, and transforms it into a chain. This is guilt tripping, or as psychologists sometimes call it, pathological guilt induction. The manipulator has discovered something powerful. You care about other people's feelings. You don't want to hurt anyone. You want to be a good person. So they engineer situations where any action you take, even self-protection, makes you feel like a villain. The mechanism: weaponizing your morality. It sounds like this. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? I guess I'm just not important enough for you to make time. Fine, abandon me like everyone else has. I should be used to it by now. You're so selfish. I would never treat you this way. If you really loved me, you wouldn't even question this." Notice the pattern. They frame their desires as moral obligations. Your boundaries become acts of cruelty. Your self-care becomes selfishness. Your need for space becomes abandonment. The psychological trap: false responsibility. Dr. Susan Forward, author of Emotional Blackmail, identifies this as a form of fog, fear, obligation, and guilt. The manipulator creates an equation in your mind. If I don't comply equals I'm a bad person. But here's the critical distinction. Genuine guilt is the emotional response to having violated your own values. Manipulated guilt is the emotional response to someone else's strategic deployment of your values against you. Think of it this way. If you steal from someone, you should feel guilty. You've violated your integrity. But if you refuse to give someone your entire paycheck and they make you feel guilty, that's manipulation. The difference is whether the guilt corresponds to an actual moral failing or is simply a tool to control your behavior. Philosophical perspective. Kant and the categorical imperative. Immanuel Kant argued that moral actions stem from duty, not from external pressure or emotional manipulation. His categorical imperative asks, what if everyone behaved this way? If you set a boundary and the manipulator says you're selfish, apply Kant's test. What if everyone set reasonable boundaries? Society would function better, not worse. Therefore, your boundary isn't immoral. Their demand that you violate it is. Seneca the Younger wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Guilt tripping operates entirely in the realm of imagination. The manipulator doesn't actually feel abandoned when you take a night to yourself. They're imagining an abandonment narrative and then making you responsible for their imaginings. The cultural context, collectivism versus healthy community. Some cultures emphasize collective harmony over individual needs, which can create vulnerability to guilt manipulation. But there's a crucial distinction between healthy interdependence and pathological enmeshment. In healthy communities, people support each other while maintaining individual autonomy. In manipulative relationships, your autonomy is framed as a betrayal of the community or relationship or family. The Japanese concept of wiyue, harmony, is often misunderstood. It doesn't mean the obliteration of self for others. It means the balance of individual and collective needs. A manipulator wants you to obliterate yourself. That's not harmony. That's exploitation. The Ronin defense, distinguishing real from manufactured guilt. When someone tries to guilt you, pause and ask yourself these questions. 1. Have I actually violated my own moral code or just failed to meet their expectations? 2. Would I expect this same behavior from someone in my position, or am I holding myself to an impossible standard? 3. Is their emotional distress genuinely caused by my actions, or is it a strategic performance? Then practice this response. I understand you're disappointed, but I'm not responsible for managing your emotions. This single sentence disrupts the entire guilt-tripping mechanism. The manipulator expects you to either defend yourself, which keeps you engaged in their frame, or immediately comply, which is their goal. This response does neither. It acknowledges their feelings without accepting responsibility for them. A Ronin recognizes the difference between causing harm and simply not sacrificing himself. You can care about someone's feelings without being enslaved by them. Sign 4. Moving the goalposts. The impossible standard. The fourth sign is particularly maddening because it creates a labyrinth with no exit. No matter what you do, it's never enough. This is called moving the goalposts. In sports, if you moved the goalposts further away every time someone was about to score, the game would become unwinnable. That's exactly what manipulators do with your relationship. The pattern, the endless treadmill. It manifests like this. You, I got promoted at work. Them, that's great, but why weren't you promoted last year when John was? You, I cooked your favorite meal for dinner. Them, you used too much salt. My mother makes it better. You, I cleaned the entire house. Them, you missed a spot. If you really cared, you would have noticed. No achievement is celebrated. Every accomplishment is diminished. Every effort is compared to an impossible standard. You become a hamster on a wheel, running faster and faster, never actually getting anywhere. The psychological purpose, manufacturing inadequacy. Why do manipulators do this? Because insecurity is easier to control than confidence. If they can keep you feeling inadequate, you'll keep trying to prove your worth. You'll stay in the relationship because you believe that once you finally meet their standards, everything will be wonderful. But here's the truth. The standards aren't real. They're a control mechanism. The moment you approach meeting one standard, it will shift. This isn't because you're failing, it's because the system is designed to be unwinnable. Dr. Craig Malkin, author of Rethinking Narcissism, calls this the narcissistic performance review. A constant evaluation where you're always falling short, keeping you dependent on their approval. Philosophical context: Sisyphus and absurd effort. Greek mythology gives us Sisyphus, condemned to roll a boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down for eternity. Albert Camus later reinterpreted this myth, arguing that we must imagine Sisyphus happy, finding meaning in the struggle itself, not the outcome. But a manipulator's goalposts create a perverse inversion of this wisdom. They want you to find meaning in the struggle while they ensure you never succeed. This isn't noble perseverance, it's engineered futility. The Stoic response is different. Epictetus taught, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." But what's in your power isn't meeting impossible standards. It's recognizing when a game is rigged and refusing to play. The neuroscience learned helplessness. In the 1960s, psychologist Martin Seligman conducted experiments that led to the theory of learned helplessness. When subjects, initially dogs, later confirmed with human participants, were exposed to negative stimuli they couldn't control or escape, they eventually stopped trying to escape even when escape became possible. Moving goalposts creates learned helplessness. You try different approaches. Nothing works. Eventually, you stop trying to meet the standards and simply accept that you're inadequate. This is exactly where the manipulator wants you. The Ronin defense. Define your own standards. The counter strategy is to stop playing their game entirely. Define your own standards based on your values, not their approval. When they criticize something you've done, try this response. "I'm satisfied with my effort. I hope you can be too." Then move on. Don't explain. Don't defend. Don't try to meet the new standard they've just created. If they say, "That's not good enough," respond with, "I disagree. I think it's perfectly adequate." Then change the subject or leave the room. This does two things. First, it establishes that their opinion isn't the ultimate arbiter of quality. Second, it removes the emotional payoff they get from watching you scramble to please them. A Ronin knows his own worth. It's not determined by someone else's constantly shifting measurement system. Sign 5. Isolation, severing your lifelines. The fifth sign is perhaps the most strategically devastating. It's called isolation, and it works by systematically severing your connections to everyone who might help you see clearly. A manipulator understands a fundamental truth. You're harder to control when you have outside perspectives. Your friends might say, "Hey, the way they talk to you isn't normal." Your family might notice you've changed. A therapist might identify the abuse patterns. So the manipulator needs to eliminate these threats to their control. The gradual process, boiling the frog. Isolation doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, almost imperceptible. It starts subtly. Your friends don't really understand you like I do. Your family is toxic. I'm the only one who truly supports you. That therapist is just trying to break us up. They don't want you to be happy. Why do you need other people when you have me? Then it escalates. Creating conflict before events so you cancel plans. Making you feel guilty for spending time with others. Criticizing everyone in your life until you start avoiding them. Monitoring your phone, email, and social media. Creating crises that require your constant attention. Eventually, you look around and realize they're the only person left in your life. You've lost your job or your career has suffered. Your friendships have deteriorated. Your family barely calls anymore, and you're completely dependent on the manipulator for social contact, financial support, and emotional validation. The evolutionary psychology, safety in numbers. Humans evolved as social creatures. For most of our history, exile from the tribe meant death. We have deep psychological programming that fears isolation. Manipulators exploit this primal fear. Dr. John Cacioppo's research on loneliness at the University of Chicago revealed that social isolation is as harmful to health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases inflammation, impairs immune function, and accelerates cognitive decline. Isolation isn't just emotionally painful, it's physiologically dangerous. Literary reference: Rapunzel and the Tower. The fairy tale of Rapunzel is actually a story about isolation as control. The witch doesn't chain Rapunzel to the tower. She doesn't need to. By isolating her from the world and convincing her that the outside is dangerous, the witch ensures Rapunzel stays voluntarily. The manipulator builds a psychological tower around you. You could leave, technically. But they've convinced you that leaving means losing everything, that no one else understands you, that the outside world is hostile. The Ronin defense. Maintain your network. The most effective defense is prevention. Maintain your relationships even when it feels difficult, especially when it feels difficult. That's when you know the manipulator is applying pressure. Make a commitment, at least one activity per week that doesn't involve the manipulator. Call a friend, visit family, attend a class, go to a coffee shop and talk to a stranger. These connections are your lifelines. If you're already isolated, start small. Reconnect with one person. Send one message. I know we haven't talked in a while. I miss you. Can we catch up? You'll be surprised how willing people are to reconnect. When the manipulator objects, and they will, respond firmly. My relationships with other people don't threaten our relationship unless you want them to. Then maintain your boundary. A Ronin understands that true strength comes from community, not isolation. A lone warrior is powerful, but a warrior with allies is unstoppable. The sixth sign is designed to destabilize your sense of security by introducing a phantom rival. This is triangulation, the art of manufactured jealousy. In a healthy relationship, your partner makes you feel chosen, valued, and secure. A manipulator does the opposite. They make you feel like you're constantly competing for their attention, affection, and approval. The mechanism: creating the triangle. They bring a third person into the dynamic, real or imagined. An ex-partner, a co-worker, a celebrity, even a hypothetical ideal. It sounds like this: my ex used to cook this dish perfectly, but this is fine. That guy at the gym asked me out today. He's incredibly successful. Why can't you be more ambitious like Sarah? I ran into Alex. We had such great chemistry. It made me think about what we have. The structure is always the same. You, them, and the rival. 3 points of a triangle. And you're always the point that's falling short. The psychological objective: insecurity and compliance. The goal is to make you feel replaceable. They want you to panic, to scramble, to work harder to win their approval. When you're busy fighting to prove your worth, you don't have the mental space or energy to notice how poorly they're treating you. You become a gladiator in an arena, fighting ghosts, while the emperor watches and laughs. The rival might not even exist. They might be entirely fabricated. But your insecurity is very real. The neuroscience: jealousy and the threat. Response: jealousy activates the same neural networks as physical pain. A study published in Science by Naomi Eisenberger showed that social rejection activates the anterior cingulate cortex and the insula, the same regions that process physical pain. When a manipulator triggers jealousy, they're quite literally causing you pain. And like someone with chronic pain, you'll do almost anything to make it stop, including sacrificing your dignity, your boundaries, and your self-respect. Cultural context. The comparison trap. Social media has normalized triangulation at a societal level. Everyone is constantly comparing themselves to curated versions of other people's lives. Manipulators exploit this existing vulnerability. They know you're already comparing yourself to others. They just weaponize it. They make you compare yourself to people who are strategically selected to make you feel inadequate. The Ronin defense. Refuse the arena. The counter strategy is simple but psychologically difficult. Refuse to compete. When they mention the rival, don't react with jealousy, anger, or insecurity. Show absolute indifference. If they say, "My ex was so fit," respond calmly, "That's wonderful. It sounds like you two were well matched. I hope you reconnect." Then return to what you were doing. If they say, "That person at work is so accomplished," respond, "You should definitely pursue that connection if it's important to you." No emotion, no competition. This does several things. First, it removes the emotional payoff they're seeking. They want to see you squirm. Your indifference is confusing and unsatisfying. Second, it calls their bluff. If the rival is real and genuinely better, you're giving them permission to pursue it. Most manipulators don't actually want the rival. They want the control that comes from making you jealous. Third, it preserves your dignity. You're not fighting for scraps of affection. You're communicating, "I know my worth. If you don't see it, that's your loss, not mine." By refusing to enter the triangle, you break the geometry of control. You leave them standing alone with their manufactured drama. A Ronin does not beg for what should be freely given. Love, respect, and loyalty are not prizes to be won through competition. They're foundations of relationship, or they're nothing at all. Sign 7. Intermittent reinforcement, the casino of trauma. And finally, we arrive at the most psychologically devastating trap of all. This is why you can't leave. This is why you return to them even after they've hurt you. This is why your logical mind says go, but your emotional system says stay. It's called intermittent reinforcement, and it hijacks your brain's reward system more effectively than any drug. The slot machine principle. Imagine a slot machine. If it paid out every single time you pulled the lever, you'd get bored quickly. The certainty would remove the excitement. If it never paid out, you'd leave after a few tries. Why waste time on something that clearly doesn't work? But if it pays out randomly, sometimes you win big, sometimes you win small, often you lose, but you never know which it will be. You become addicted. You keep pulling the lever, chasing that next win, convinced that it's just around the corner. This is intermittent reinforcement, and it's the most powerful behavior modification tool ever discovered. B.F. Skinner, the father of behavioral psychology, demonstrated this with his famous experiments in the 1950s. Animals working for random rewards would press the lever far more frequently and persistently than animals receiving consistent rewards. Manipulators, whether consciously or instinctively, use this on you. The cycle. Trauma and reward. The pattern looks like this. Monday. They treat you like royalty. Love bombing returns, incredible sex, thoughtful gestures, deep conversations. You feel like you're with the person you originally fell in love with. The win. Tuesday. They're cold. They ignore your messages. They criticize something you're wearing. They pick a fight over nothing. The loss. Wednesday. Complete emotional shutdown, silent treatment. You're walking on eggshells. The confusion. Thursday. Suddenly, they're sweet again. They apologize, sort of. They buy you a gift. They're affectionate. The win. Friday. Another fight. Worse this time. They threaten to leave. The loss. Saturday. They come back. They say they can't live without you. Passionate reunion. The big win. The neurochemical hijacking. Your brain gets addicted to the highs of unpredictable rewards. Dr. Kent Berridge explains that dopamine drives wanting, anticipation, more than actual liking. You endure abuse hoping the good version returns, but it was only bait. The trauma bond. This is a trauma bond, a chemical dependency, not love. Neuroimaging proves it activates the same brain regions as cocaine addiction. You aren't weak or stupid. Your neurochemistry has been weaponized. You are experiencing the neurological equivalent of a lab rat, pressing a button for rewards that only come sometimes. Philosophical context: Heraclitus and character constancy. The pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus said, "Character is destiny." What he meant is that a person's fundamental nature determines their path. While he also famously said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice," he was talking about circumstances, not character. The manipulator wants you to believe they can change, that their character is as fluid as a river. But Heraclitus understood. The river changes, but a stone remains a stone. A manipulator's character, their fundamental pattern, doesn't transform just because you love them enough. The Stoic Epictetus taught, consistency is the foundation of virtue, not sporadic kindness, not intermittent affection, consistency. If someone's kindness is a random event rather than a reliable pattern, it's not kindness, it's manipulation. The Ronin defense, pattern over potential. Stop looking at who they are on their best days. Start looking at the pattern across all days. Create a simple chart if you need to. Track their behavior for a month. You'll see it clearly. The intermittent nature isn't accidental. It's the strategy. The confusion you feel isn't because you're stupid or can't see clearly. The confusion is the point. The confusion is the mechanism. If you weren't confused, you would leave. The manipulator knows this. Here's the liberating truth. You don't need to understand why they do this. You don't need to heal them. You don't need to wait for the person they could be to finally emerge permanently. You only need to recognize the pattern and remove yourself from the casino. Stability feels boring to someone addicted to emotional chaos, but stability is peace, and peace is what a Ronin seeks. Stop pulling the lever, smash the machine, walk out of the casino. Conclusion: the Ronin awakening. If you recognized these 7 manipulation tactics in your life, don't feel ashamed. Manipulation works precisely because it weaponizes your kindness, trust, and empathy. Being manipulated doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're human. The Stoic response: you can't control the manipulator, only your reaction. Marcus Aurelius: you have power over your mind, not outside events. What to do? Start documenting everything. Reconnect with one lost friend. Set one small boundary and hold it. Seek professional help. Create a safety/exit plan. The truth: freedom is having choice. A Ronin belongs to no one but themselves. Guard your peace. Trust your reality. Set boundaries without guilt. You're not broken. You survived psychological warfare. That makes you stronger than you know. Cut the strings. Reclaim your reality. Own yourself. See everything. Fear nothing. Own yourself.